Without doing anything at all, your heart is beating. Your lungs are breathing. Somewhere inside you, millions of tiny processes are quietly keeping you alive, asking nothing in return. And yet, most of us spend our days feeling like something is missing, like we are somehow behind, like the life we are supposed to be living is just slightly out of reach. What if that feeling, that quiet ache, isn't a sign that something is wrong with you? The Buddha called it a misunderstanding of the true nature of reality. And he spent a lifetime teaching that once you see through it, even just a little, something in you quietly relaxes and never quite tightens the same way again. These Buddhist teachings don't explain reality through scripture or doctrine. They explain it through a cloud drifting across the sky, through a candle flame that looks permanent, but is actually millions of tiny flames succeeding each other, through a river that is never the same river twice. The deepest truths were never hiding in complexity. They were sitting in the ordinary things you've walked past without stopping. Tonight we stop, together, slowly, the way you'd sit with someone who has no agenda except to help you see clearly. Get comfortable. Let your body soften into wherever you are. And if it feels right, drop a comment, letting us know where in the world you're listening from tonight. You might be surprised how many people are sitting with you right now. There is a story about a bear, not a fearsome bear, a small, round, honey-loving bear named Winnie the Pooh. And one winter morning, this bear stepped outside into the snow and noticed something that stopped him completely. Footprints, large ones, pressed deep into the white ground, circling around the base of a familiar tree. Pooh stared at them for a long moment, his little heart beginning to quicken. Something had been here, something unknown, something that left its mark and disappeared into the cold morning air without a sound. He called for his friend Piglet, and together they began to follow the tracks. One round, then another, the footprints multiplying with each circle they walked. More and more of them appearing, as if whatever creature left them was gathering its courage, circling closer, growing bolder with each pass. Pooh's worry deepened with every step. Piglet's tiny legs trembled beside him. And then Christopher Robin, sitting quietly in a tree above them, looked down and said something simple. Something that stopped them completely. "You're going round and round the tree," he said. "Those are your own footprints." Pooh stopped, looked down, and there they were, his own 4 paws, matching perfectly the terrifying tracks he had been following with such dread. The monster he feared was himself. Now, before we smile too quickly at Pooh's mistake, consider something. We do the very same thing, every single day. We move through our lives convinced that the world we are seeing exists exactly as we see it. Solid, fixed, out there, independent of us, indifferent to our looking, complete without our participation. We believe there is a world, and then there is us, standing somewhere inside it, observing from the outside. The Buddha looked at this very carefully, more carefully than almost anyone before or since, and he said something that is still, centuries later, quietly astonishing. He said, "What you call the world is not separate from the mind that perceives it. Subject and object, the one who sees and the thing being seen, they do not exist independently of each other. They arise together. They manifest at the same moment, the way a question and its answer belong to the same movement of thought." This is not poetry. It is not reassuring philosophy designed to soften a difficult life. It is a precise description of what is actually happening every single time you open your eyes. Let's slow down here, because this is exactly the kind of teaching that is easy to hear and very easy to let drift past without landing. Think about the color red. Right now, wherever you are, bring to mind something red. A rose, perhaps. A traffic light. A warm mug sitting on a kitchen counter on a cold morning. Now sit with this question. Where does red actually exist? It is not in the rose itself. The rose has no awareness of its own color. It simply is. Red is not in the light either. Light is wavelengths of energy moving through space, colorless, carrying nothing but motion. Red only appears when that light meets the specific cells at the back of your eye, cells you were born with, cells another creature may not share, and your mind translates that meeting into the warm, particular experience of redness. The red you see is not in the world. It is in the meeting between you and the world. This is what the Buddha was pointing to. Not that the world doesn't exist, but that the world as you experience it is always, without exception, a collaboration between what is out there and what is in here. You have never seen a rose. You have seen your mind's response to a rose. You have never heard rain. You have heard your mind's translation of pressure waves moving through air. You have never touched another person's hand. You have felt the signals your skin sent rushing inward, and your mind shaped those signals into the particular, irreplaceable warmth of being held. None of this makes the rose less beautiful. None of this makes rain less real. None of this makes being held less precious. In fact, it makes all of it more extraordinary, because it means you are not a passive observer of a world that proceeds without you. You are a participant in the continuous, quiet, moment-by-moment shaping of everything you experience. The act of looking at a flower is not one-directional. The moment you look, something in you responds. Something shifts. The flower enters you as color, as fragrance, as something that moves through the chest before the mind can name it. And you, in a way that is difficult to say plainly, enter the flower. The seeing moves in both directions at once. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything arises in relationship to everything else. And nowhere is this more immediate than in the act of perception itself. To see is not a one-way street. It is a conversation. Every moment of experience is this, a dialogue between the world and the mind that holds it. The world speaks, the mind responds, and the response is what we call our life. Now, let's take this somewhere even closer to home. Think about the word left. Just the simple, everyday direction. Can left exist without right? It cannot, not even slightly. Left has no meaning, no existence whatsoever, unless right is also present. You cannot point left in a universe where right does not exist. They arise together. They define each other completely. Remove one, and the other dissolves. High cannot exist without low. Near cannot exist without far. Inside cannot exist without outside. This is exactly how subject and object work. There is no you who perceives without a world being perceived. There is no world being perceived without a perceiver present to bring it into experience. They are left and right. They are the two ends of the same stick. Pick up one end and the other comes with it. This might feel abstract when you say it quickly, but try to feel it rather than just think it. Soften your gaze for a moment, or simply rest your eyes if you can. Notice what is actually happening inside you right now. Not your thoughts about what is happening, just the raw, immediate texture of being here. There is warmth, perhaps, or a slight heaviness across the shoulders, maybe a sound, a fan, a passing car, someone breathing in the next room. Maybe something that is not quite sadness and not quite peace, but lives quietly in the space between both. Now ask yourself honestly, where does that experience begin? Where do you end and the world starts? It is surprisingly difficult to find the border. The sound in the room, is it in the room or in your ear or in your mind? The tension in your shoulders, is it in your body or in the thought that produced it, or in the moment earlier today that started the whole chain? When you try to locate the exact place where you stop and the world begins, you find there is no clean line. There is only a continuous process of meeting, an ongoing exchange between inside and outside that cannot be untangled because it was never separate to begin with. The Buddha called this the nature of consciousness, not a fixed thing sitting behind your eyes, not a self quietly watching a screen. Consciousness is a process, a relationship, a dynamic, constantly renewing meeting between what is within and what is without, each giving rise to the other in the same instant. And here is where this becomes more than philosophy. Because if the world you experience is shaped, not invented, but genuinely shaped by the quality of the mind meeting it, then the state of that mind matters enormously. A mind moving through the day inside fear sees threat everywhere it looks. Not because the world is more dangerous that day, but because fear is a lens. And every lens changes what passes through it. A mind carrying unresolved grief sees the world drained of warmth. A mind resting in genuine love finds beauty in corners it had walked past 100 times before. Think of a potter sitting with clay. She does not simply react to what is in front of her. She brings something to it. Her hands, her attention, her years of learning how clay moves and resists and yields. And in that meeting between the potter and the clay, something is made that neither could have produced alone. This is perception. This is every moment of being alive. This is not optimism. It is the plain mechanics of how experience actually works. And the Buddha pointed to it his entire life, because he understood that seeing this clearly changes something fundamental. Not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because we stop exhausting ourselves fighting the wrong battle. So much of our tiredness comes from trying to control what is out there, from arranging the world into a shape that will finally feel safe. Not realizing that the quality of experience lives right here, in the meeting, in the relationship between the one who looks and what is being looked at. There is a line from the Dhammapada, one of Buddhism's oldest texts, that has carried people through centuries of difficulty. Mind is the forerunner of all actions. Not mind is one factor among many. Not mind plays a role. Mind is the forerunner. Mind arrives first. Not because reality doesn't exist outside us, but because our experience of that reality is always, already, shaped by the mind receiving it. Think of two people sitting in the same room on the same evening. Outside the window, the sun is setting, deep orange, spreading slow and wide. One of them looks up and feels something open quietly in the chest. A wordless gratitude, the kind that doesn't ask for a reason. The other glances at the same sky and feels a sudden ache move through them, because the last time they watched a sunset like this, someone they loved was still sitting beside them. Same sun, same sky, same light, reaching both pairs of eyes in the same moment. Two entirely different worlds. Which one is seeing the sunset correctly? Both of them, and neither of them. Because neither one is seeing the sunset itself. Both are seeing their own experience of the sun. And that experience, shaped by memory, by love, by loss, by the particular weight of one human life, is always in part a creation of the mind that meets it. This is not a sad thing. Stay with it long enough, and something in it begins to feel like relief. Because it means that what you call your life, The weight of it, the texture of it, the beauty and the difficulty of it is not simply being handed to you from the outside. It is being shaped every moment in the meeting between what arrives and what you bring to the arriving. And what you bring to that meeting is not fixed forever. It can soften, it can open, it can be trained toward greater clarity. That is the whole foundation of Buddhist practice. Not to change the world by force, not to retreat from the world into private stillness, but to work with the mind that meets the world so that the meeting itself becomes a little cleaner, a little clearer, a little more awake to what is actually there. We began with Pooh and his footprints, a small bear frightening himself by following his own tracks through the snow, adding circles to circles, certain that something terrible was closing in. It is a gentle image, tender, but the teaching inside it is one of the most important you will ever sit with. What we fear in the world is often something we have placed there. What we cannot find in the world is often something we have not yet learned to bring. Christopher Robin did not rescue Pooh from a monster. He simply helped him see what was true the whole time. That is what these teachings offer. Not a different world, a clearer way of looking at this one. And sometimes, a clearer way of looking is all it takes for the morning to feel, once again, like something worth walking into. Light a candle tonight, if you can. Set it somewhere you can watch it without effort, on a table, a windowsill, anywhere the air is still enough to let it stand. And just look at it for a moment. Not analyzing, not thinking about what it means, just watching the way it moves, that small, steady, golden presence, holding itself upright in the dark. It looks like one thing, doesn't it? One continuous flame, stable, singular, the same flame it was a moment ago, and the same flame it will be a moment from now. But it isn't. What you are watching is not one flame at all. It is millions of tiny combustions, each one lasting only a fraction of a second, each one giving rise to the next before the previous one has fully gone. The flame at this instant is not the flame of a second ago. It is an entirely new event, fed by the same wick, shaped by the same air, carrying the same light forward, but genuinely, completely new. No single flame survives from one moment to the next. Only the continuity survives. Only the passing forward of heat and light, moment to moment, creating the convincing impression of one steady, unchanging thing. The Buddha used this image to describe the mind, not as a metaphor meant to comfort, as a description of what is literally, precisely true. What you call your consciousness, the inner life you carry from morning to night, the sense of being you that persists across decades, is not a fixed thing sitting somewhere behind your eyes. It is a succession, a continuous arising and passing of moments of awareness, each one distinct, each one giving birth to the next before the previous one has had time to settle. You are not a flame, you are a burning. Let that land for a moment before we go further, because there is something in us that resists this, something that grips the idea of a permanent self, the way hands grip something precious in a strong wind. We want to be continuous. We want the person who woke up this morning to be the same person who fell asleep last night. And yet, if you sit quietly and try to locate this permanent self, try to find the fixed, unchanging center of who you are, you discover something quietly startling. You cannot find it. Not because it is hidden, but because it was never there in the first place. What you find instead, every time, is movement, a thought arising, a sensation passing, a feeling gathering and dissolving, a breath coming in and going out. Life moving through you, not a you standing still inside it. Think about a film for a moment, a proper old film, the kind wound on a reel, fed through a projector, thrown in light across a white screen. What you see when you watch a film is motion, a woman walking across a bridge, rain falling in slow diagonals, a child turning to laugh at something just outside the frame. All of it fluid, continuous, alive. But stop the reel. Hold one frame up to the light, and what you find is a still image, frozen, silent, a single captured moment with no movement whatsoever. The motion you experienced was never in any one frame. It existed only in the rapid succession of frames, each still, each separate, each giving way to the next, fast enough to fool the eye into seeing flow where there was only sequence. Consciousness works the same way. Every moment of awareness is its own complete event, brief, distinct, already gone by the time you notice it. But because these moments arise in such rapid, unbroken succession, one igniting the next, the way each film frame creates the illusion of movement, the mind produces a seamless story of continuity. A story of a self that persists, a story that is, in its own way, deeply convincing and deeply exhausting. Now consider how this applies to something even more intimate, your memories. Most of us treat our memories the way we treat photographs, fixed records, accurate reproductions of things that actually happened, stored somewhere in the mind, waiting to be retrieved unchanged. But a memory is not a photograph. Every time you remember something, you are not retrieving a stored image, you are reconstructing it, rebuilding it from whatever fragments remain, filling the gaps with what feels right, shaping it, without realizing, around who you are right now, rather than who you were then. The memory changes each time you visit it, slightly, the way a story shifts in the retelling, not dishonestly, but organically, because the one doing the telling is never quite the same person twice. This means that the painful memory you have carried for years, the one that surfaces uninvited, that still tightens something in the chest, is not a perfect recording of what happened. It is a living reconstruction, shaped by every year of experience that has passed since the original moment, which means it is not sealed. It is not final. It is, like everything else in the mind, a flame, and flames can change. Because when you believe you are a fixed self, a permanent entity that must be defended and protected, the work never ends. Every threat must be met. Every impermanence becomes a loss. Every change becomes a danger. But if you are not a fixed self, if you are more like a flame, more like a film, more like a river of arising and passing moments, then what exactly is there to defend? There is a parallel here that comes not from ancient texts, but from something much closer to home, the way music works. Think of an orchestra preparing to play, 40 musicians, each holding a different instrument, each trained in a different tradition of sound. Before the music begins, the conductor raises the baton and everyone waits for the signal. We assume the conductor is essential, that without a single leader coordinating everything from above, the music would dissolve into noise. But there are forms of music, ancient, beautiful, intricate forms, that have no conductor at all, where musicians listen to each other so deeply, respond to each other so fluidly, that the whole piece moves as a single, living thing without anyone directing it. The music doesn't fall apart. It deepens. It finds its own coherence from within, arising from the relationship between the players rather than from any authority above them. The mind works this way. There is no central self sitting at the controls, no permanent you managing the operation from somewhere behind your forehead. What there is, what you actually are, is an extraordinary conversation between countless processes, all responding to each other, all arising together, producing something that feels unified, even though no single conductor holds it together. The music plays. Nobody is running it, and it is beautiful. Let's pause and do something simple together. Breathe in slowly. Let the breath arrive at its own depth and pace. As it comes in, notice this. This breath, the one entering you right now, has never existed before. This precise moment of your lungs opening, this exact meeting between your body and the air around you, it is completely new. Now let it go, gently, all of it. You just released something that will never exist again. That breath is gone, not lost, not wasted, but complete. It did its work. It passed through you and became part of the world. And here you are, still here, renewed without effort, continued without trying. This is what the Buddha meant by impermanence. Not a warning, not a threat. A description of the fact that life renews itself completely, in every moment, without being asked. So what does this mean for your daily life? It means that the version of you who made a mistake last year is not the version of you sitting here now. Not as a kind of self-forgiveness technique, but literally, structurally, the way no frame in a film is the same as the frame before it. That version has passed, like a breath released, like a flame that has given its heat forward and gone. You are the flame that arose from it, shaped by what came before, yes, but genuinely, actually new. It means the anxiety you felt this morning is not your permanent condition. It is a moment of consciousness, brief, already in the process of giving way to the next moment. You don't have to fix it entirely. You simply have to let it be what it is, a passing frame in a long and moving picture, and trust that the next frame is already forming. It means something tender about the people you love too. The person sitting across from you at dinner tonight, your partner, your parent, your oldest friend, is also a flame, also a succession of moments, each one distinct, each one passing. The version of them who hurt you 3 years ago is not the version sitting across from you now. Not entirely. Something has burned through. Something has passed forward. And when we forget this, when we hold the people we love frozen in the frame of their worst moment, we are doing to them exactly what we do to ourselves. We are asking the flame to be a stone. Impermanence is not the problem. Resistance to impermanence is the problem. The insistence that the flame stay exactly as it was, that the frame freeze, that the breath hold itself without ever releasing. The Buddha described this resistance as the root of suffering, pointing more precisely to a quality of strain, like a wheel slightly off-center that never quite rolls smoothly. The wheel is off-center because we keep pressing against the natural movement of things. We keep asking the flame to be a stone. But the flame cannot be a stone, and neither can you. Notice the tiny pause at the very top of your next inhale, that small stillness before the breath turns and begins to release. Just a fraction of a second, easy to miss entirely. But it is there, a small, perfect gap, where one frame gives way to the next, and you, for just an instant, are neither holding on nor letting go. Just present, just here, just the burning. The same impermanence that makes loss possible makes healing possible. The same quality of arising and passing that makes joy temporary also makes suffering temporary. Nothing is sealed. Nothing is final. The next moment is already being born from this one, already carrying forward what is most essential, already releasing what no longer needs to come. Tonight, somewhere near you, a candle is possible. A small flame standing in the dark, burning not despite its impermanence, but because of it, renewing itself in every instant, carrying its light faithfully forward through a chain of moments too brief to hold, too continuous to break. That is what you are, not the wax, not the wick, the burning itself, alive, renewing, and in every moment, completely new. Look up sometime this week, not with any particular purpose, just up, past the ceiling, past the rooftops, past the telephone lines, threading their way across the sky. Find a cloud if there is one, any cloud, a slow white mass drifting without hurry, or a thin grey streak pulling itself apart at the edges, or one of those enormous towering formations that look, from below, like something ancient and unhurried moving through a world of its own. Just watch it for a moment, because that cloud has a story, and it is, quietly, your story too. Every cloud begins somewhere you cannot see, deep in the ocean, or in the shallow warmth of a rice field, or rising invisibly from the surface of a river on a cold morning. Water molecules loosen their grip on each other and rise. Not dramatically, not with any announcement, simply rising, the way things do when conditions allow, drifting upward into cooler air, where they gather, slowly, around tiny particles of dust floating in the atmosphere. One molecule finding another, then another, until something visible forms where there was nothing visible before. A cloud appears. We call this a birth, but was there really a moment of birth? Was there a precise instant when non-cloud became cloud? Or was there simply a gradual gathering, a slow accumulation of what was always already there, taking on a new form, becoming recognizable, where before it was invisible? The cloud floats. It drifts across the sky, neither hurrying nor resisting, moved by winds it doesn't choose, shaped by temperatures it cannot control. Inside it, things are happening that you cannot see from below. Tiny crystals of ice forming and melting, water droplets gathering weight, a continuous interior life of change and movement, invisible from the outside, ceaseless on the inside. And then, somewhere over a hillside, or above a sleeping city, or across the wide flatness of an open field, the cloud releases. Rain begins to fall. Most of us, watching rain fall, see only the ending of a cloud. We see departure. We see loss. The cloud was there, and now it is diminishing, releasing itself downward, becoming something other than what it was. But look more carefully. The rain falling from that cloud is not the death of the cloud. It is the cloud in a new form, moving into a new stage of its journey. The water that was floating high above the earth is now running into streams, feeding roots, filling rivers, finding its way toward the ocean. It has not disappeared. It has not been lost. It has simply become something that can do different work in a different place. The Buddha pointed to this kind of transformation repeatedly, not as poetry, but as a precise description of how continuation actually works. He wanted his students to see that what we call ending is almost always something else entirely, a changing of form, a movement into a new expression of the same essential nature, not disappearance, translation. Imagine the part of the cloud that remains above, still floating, still drifting, while its rain falls below. If that remaining cloud could speak to the rain now falling, what might it say? Something like, "I hope you enjoy flowing down there. I am still here, floating above, and it is good up here, but I hope flowing down there is good too." Not grief, not loss. A kind of gentle companionship between the same water in different forms, wishing itself well across the distance of transformation. And the rain, finding its way into a river, might look up at the sky and recognize something familiar. We were one thing. Now we are two expressions of the same thing. And both expressions are real. And both are continuing, and nothing at all, has been lost. This is what the Buddha meant by continuation. Not survival, not the persistence of a fixed self moving intact from one life to the next like a traveler changing trains, but something more like the cloud, a continuous process of transformation in which nothing is ever truly destroyed and nothing ever truly disappears. Only forms change, only expressions shift. The water remains. Now the river carries that water toward the sea. It moves over stones, through valleys, past towns where children throw sticks from bridges and watch them float away. It is cold in some places, warm where the sun has been resting on it all afternoon. It is fast in the narrows and slow and wide in the flatlands. And then it reaches the ocean and mingles there, becomes indistinguishable from the vast collective body of water that covers most of this planet. And then the sun warms the surface of the ocean, and water molecules loosen their grip on each other and rise. And the whole journey begins again. Was there a death anywhere in that story? Not one, not a single moment of genuine annihilation, only transformation, only continuation, only the same water, the same essential nature, moving through form after form with a faithfulness that requires no effort and asks for no permission. But here is the teaching that sits even deeper than this. The cloud does not need to become rain in order to have a new life. Even while it floats, even in a single afternoon of drifting, the cloud is being reborn continuously. Every moment, water molecules are leaving it and joining it. Every moment, its shape is shifting, its edges dissolving and reforming. Every moment, the cloud of right now is genuinely different from the cloud of a moment ago, not symbolically different, not poetically different, but actually, physically, measurably different. The cloud is always in the process of becoming, not waiting for death to begin the next life. Living the next life right now, in the same sky, in the same form, continuously renewed from within. And so are you. Think about what is happening in your body at this precise moment. Your blood is moving. Your cells are completing and beginning cycles of their own. The lining of your stomach replaces itself every few days. Your skin is shedding and renewing itself in a process so continuous you never feel it happening. The oxygen entering your lungs right now will reach your brain within seconds, will become part of a thought, will influence, in some small and untraceable way, who you are in the next moment. Rebirth is not waiting for you at the end of your life. It is happening right now. In this breath, in this heartbeat, in this moment of listening, something in you is completing and something is beginning, and the border between the two is so thin it cannot be found. The Buddha taught something that sounds simple until you really sit with it. He said, "Look at what is happening in the present moment, and you will understand everything people ask about death. Because birth and death are not events that bookend a life. They are the texture of every moment of that life. The inhale is a birth. The exhale is a death. And in the small pause between them, in that quiet gap where the breath has fully released and not yet begun to return, you are neither. Just present. Just the space in which both are possible." Now let's bring in one more image, one found in classical Buddhist teaching because of how precisely it captures something the mind otherwise struggles to hold. Imagine someone standing in a dark field at night, holding a burning torch. They begin to move the torch in a circle, slowly at first, then faster. And if you watch from a distance, something strange happens. You see a ring of fire, complete, continuous, a perfect glowing circle hanging in the dark as if it were a solid thing. But of course it isn't there. There is only a single point of fire moving too quickly for the eye to track as separate moments. The circle is not real. The continuity is not real. What is real is a succession of individual flame points, each one distinct, each one in a slightly different position, creating through their rapid sequence the convincing illusion of something whole and unbroken. This is how we experience the self. The sense of being a continuous, unified person, the same person who was a child once and will be old someday, the same person who remembers and plans and worries and loves, is real in the way the fire circle is real. It appears, it functions, it has genuine effects. But underneath the appearance, what is actually present is a succession of distinct moments of experience, each one brief, each one complete in itself, each one giving rise to the next, without any permanent thread running through them. And when the torch stops moving, the circle disappears, not because something died, because the conditions that created the appearance are no longer present. This is not a frightening teaching. It sounds frightening, and the mind, hearing it for the first time, often recoils, because we have been holding so tightly to the idea of a permanent self for so long that the suggestion of its absence feels like a threat. But the people who have sat with this teaching long enough, who have let it move from the level of idea down into the body, into the breath, into the quiet hours of early morning, almost universally report the same thing: relief. Because if there is no fixed self to protect, there is nothing that can be permanently damaged. If there is no permanent self to lose, then loss itself changes its nature. What we call loss is not annihilation, it is transformation. It is the cloud becoming rain. It is the fire circle dissolving back into a single moving point of light. It is the river reaching the ocean and becoming something vaster than what it was. The people we have lost are not gone in the way we fear they are gone. They have become rain. They are in the river. They are in the particular way light falls through a window on a winter afternoon, in the unexpected memory that surfaces while washing dishes, in the specific laugh of someone who never knew them, but somehow carries the same warmth. They have not disappeared. They have distributed themselves into the world, the way a cloud distributes itself into rain, and the world is different because of what they released into it. Every act of genuine kindness you have ever offered is still moving through the world. Every moment you chose patience when you wanted to react, every time you sat with someone in their difficulty without trying to fix it, every small and private decision to be softer than the situation seemed to require, those are not lost. They have been absorbed. They have changed something. They are in the world now, continuing in forms you will never be able to trace or measure. You are already raining, already flowing, already part of the river, even while you are still here, still floating, still this particular shape of cloud in this particular sky. So when the fear comes, as it does for all of us, in the small hours, in the quiet after loss, in the moments when the impermanence of everything becomes suddenly, viscerally real, remember the cloud. Not as comfort, as fact. The cloud has never died. Not once, in the entire history of water on this planet, has a single molecule of water been destroyed. It has only moved, only changed, only continued, in form after form, in place after place, in expression after expression, with a faithfulness so complete and so quiet that we mistake it for loss, simply because we cannot follow it with our eyes. Look up sometime this week. Find a cloud. Watch it for a moment without trying to hold it in place. And let it remind you of what you are. There is a river not far from where the Buddha taught. It has been flowing for longer than anyone can measure, through seasons, through centuries, through the rise and fall of everything built along its banks. People have given it a name. They have drawn it on maps, written it into history, told their children its name, the way you tell a child the name of an old friend. But the water in that river right now has never been there before. Every drop currently moving through that riverbed arrived recently. From rain, from snowmelt, from underground springs, releasing what they have been holding in the dark. The water from last year is gone. The water from last week is gone. What carries the river's name forward is not the water. It is the shape, the banks, the bed, the particular curve around a certain hill that gives passing water its temporary form and direction. The name stays, the water moves, and we call it the same river. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus noticed this and said something that has stayed with people for 2,500 years. You cannot step into the same river twice, not because the river is unreliable, but because by the time you lift your foot and place it back in the water, both the river and the one stepping have moved on. New water, new cells in the foot that meets it. A new moment that has never existed before and will never exist again. The Buddha arrived at the same observation from a different direction, and he pushed it further. He asked, if the river is not the same river, and the person stepping in is not the same person, then what exactly is the same? What is it that persists? What thread runs through the changing water, the changing body, the changing mind, and earns the name we keep using? What he found, sitting with this question with extraordinary patience, was that there is no fixed thread. There is only continuity of process, only the river-shaped movement of water, only the human-shaped movement of consciousness and matter through time. What we call a self is not a thing. It is a pattern, a recognizable shape that water takes as it moves through a particular landscape. This teaching has a name in Buddhism: interbeing. Not simply the idea that things are connected, but the recognition that things do not exist independently at all. That what you call you is made entirely of elements that are not you: water, air, sunlight, the food grown in soil by farmers you will never meet, the language given to you by people long dead, the love or the wound passed down through generations before you were born. Remove any of these elements, and the you that remains is not a reduced you. It is no you at all. Think about the piece of bread you ate this morning, or the coffee, or the simple glass of water. Follow it backward just a few steps. The wheat in the bread grew in soil, built up over centuries from decomposed leaves, animal matter, mineral deposits, laid down long before any human walked that land. Rain fell on it, water that had been ocean, had been cloud, had been river. The sun reached it, light that left the surface of the sun 8 minutes before it touched the wheat, traveling 93 million miles without stopping. A farmer planted it. Someone drove it to a mill. Someone else baked it. Someone packed it. Someone stocked it on a shelf where you found it. Every one of those people had a mother. Every one of those people had a history, a struggle, a particular tired evening that was part of the chain leading to the bread on your table this morning. When you ate that bread, you ate the rain, you ate the sun, you ate the soil and the farmer, and the long quiet journey of light across space. All of it is now in you, literally building the cells that are carrying you through this moment. You contain all of that, and all of that contains the traces of everything that came before it, which means that when you try to find where you end and the world begins, you find the same thing the river finds when it tries to separate itself from its water. There is no clean edge. There is only the continuous movement of the world through a particular form, which we call a person, which we call by a name, which we love and worry about and try so hard to protect. The Buddhist teachings take this further still. You are not only made of non-human elements in the present, you carry your entire evolutionary history inside you, right now, in the structure of your body and the instincts of your nervous system. You were a rock. The minerals in your bones, the iron in your blood, the calcium in your teeth, these are ancient beyond imagining. They were forged in the cores of stars that exploded billions of years before this solar system existed. The rock is in you. The mountain is in you. The slow, patient, unmovable quality of stone, that is your inheritance too. You were a plant, the part of you that turns toward warmth, that needs light, that grows in the direction of what nourishes it, that is, the plant ancestry expressing itself through a more complex form. You were a fish, the part of you that reads the emotional currents of a room the moment you enter it, that senses danger before the thinking mind has processed it, that moves fluidly through social water, that is ancient. That is the fish, still swimming. You were a bird, the part of you that longs sometimes to simply leave, to rise above the complications of a life and see it from a distance. That is not escapism. That is an old inheritance pressing forward through time. You were a cloud. You were a river. You were, in forms too ancient to name, every living thing that preceded the particular arrangement of matter and consciousness currently listening to these words. The Buddha described this with a characteristic lightness in one of his most accessible teachings. He pointed to how each creature, each mind, understands the universe entirely through the lens of what it is. A fish, swimming happily through the water, might reasonably conclude that the highest possible being must be the greatest swimmer in the world. Because the fish was made for water, lives in water, experiences the whole of existence through water, it is natural that it would imagine ultimate perfection as a perfection of its own most essential quality. A rose would conclude that the highest expression of existence is beauty. A mathematician would conclude it is the elegance of numbers. Each creature, each mind, projects outward from its own center, seeing the cosmos through the particular lens of what it is, and calls that projection the whole truth. And we do the same. We look at the universe through the lens of a human nervous system, a human history, a human set of needs and fears and longings, and we call that looking objective reality. We forget that we are the fish, and the water we are swimming in is the consciousness we brought with us. But here is what the fish misses: swimming in its certainty. The river in which it swims also contains the memory of rain. The ocean toward which it moves contains the dissolved minerals of every continent. The water it breathes through its gills has been, at various points in history, frozen at the poles, suspended as cloud over the Himalayas, fallen as snow on mountains that no longer exist. The fish, swimming in what it calls its home, is swimming in the entire history of the planet, and so are you. This is not an abstract teaching meant to dissolve the self into comfortable nothingness. It is a teaching with consequences, practical, urgent, deeply felt consequences for how we live. If you are made of the forest, then the destruction of a forest is not a problem for the forest alone. It is a diminishment of you, not metaphorically. Literally, the oxygen you breathe, the rainfall patterns that determine whether your food grows, the temperature of the atmosphere your body depends on, these are produced and regulated by systems of which forests are a fundamental part. To protect the forest is not charity towards something separate from you. It is self-care in the deepest sense possible. The Buddha taught this in the Diamond Sutra, one of the most precise and unsparing texts in all of Buddhist literature. One who practices for the liberation of all beings cannot draw a circle around all beings that excludes any part of the living world, because the living world is not a collection of separate beings who happen to share a planet. It is a single, intricate, mutually sustaining process, and what you do to any part of it, you do to the whole, which means you do it to yourself. When you harm the river, you harm the river in you. When you care for the soil, you care for the soil that built the bones you are sitting in right now. When you protect what is ancient and slow and patient in the world, you are honoring what is ancient and slow and patient in yourself. But let's come back to something closer, something that lands not in the mind but in the chest. The teaching of no self, of interbeing, of being the river rather than something standing at the river's edge. This teaching offers something that all the self-improvement strategies in the world cannot quite deliver: rest. The exhaustion of maintaining a fixed self is something most of us have been carrying so long we have stopped noticing its weight. The constant management of how we appear, the vigilant protection of our version of events, the ongoing project of being consistent, of making sense, of holding together a coherent story about who we are and why we are that way and what we intend to do about it. It is genuinely tiring, and most of us suspect, privately, that the self we are working so hard to maintain is not quite as solid or as settled as we present it to the world. The Buddha's teaching does not ask you to fix this self or improve it, or finally get it right. It asks you to look at it clearly enough to see what it actually is. A river, a pattern of water moving through a particular landscape, a cloud taking a recognizable shape in a particular sky. Real enough to have a name, real enough to be loved, real enough to matter enormously, but not so fixed, not so bounded, not so separate from everything else that it needs, the kind of desperate defending we have been giving it. You are the river, and the rain, and the ocean, and the cloud. You are the rock that was forged in a star. You are the fish swimming in inherited water. You are the rose that opened this morning without being asked to. And you are the person listening right now, with whatever weight you are carrying, whatever question sits unanswered at the back of your mind, whatever small or large grief has made a home in your chest. All of it is real. All of it is you. And none of it, not one part of it, exists in isolation from the vast, patient, continuously moving world that made you and holds you and will, in time, carry you forward in forms you cannot yet imagine. The river keeps moving, the name stays on the map, and the water, always, faithfully, without effort, finds its way. There is a word in Buddhism that most people in the West think they understand. They have seen it on the backs of cars, heard it used in casual conversation, watched it appear in songs and films and passing jokes. The word is karma, and what most people mean when they use it is something like, what goes around comes around. A cosmic accounting system, a kind of spiritual justice that rewards the good and punishes the bad, eventually, in ways that may not be immediately visible, but are nonetheless being carefully tracked somewhere. This is not what the Buddha meant. The word karma, in its original meaning, is far simpler and far more immediate than any system of cosmic reward and punishment. It means, quite precisely, action, not the consequences of action, not the judgment of action, the action itself. And the Buddha was specific about what counts as action, not only what you do with your hands or your body, not only what you say aloud to the people around you, but what you think. Thought is action. Speech is action. Physical movement is action. And all three leave traces. In you, in the people near you, in the world that extends outward from wherever you are sitting right now. Among the oldest recorded Buddhist teachings is a pair of lines so direct they feel almost blunt. Mind is the forerunner of all actions. What we think, we become. Not eventually, not after sufficient repetition. The process begins at the moment of thinking, because a thought is not a private event that stays neatly contained inside the skull. A thought is energy. It moves. It changes the body that produces it, the face that carries it, the room it enters when that face walks through a door. Try something small right now. Just for a moment, bring to mind someone you genuinely love. Not an idea of love, the actual person, their face, a specific memory of being with them, the particular quality of their presence when they are in a good mood and the room feels lighter because of it. Notice what happens in your body as you do this. Something softens, doesn't it? Something around the eyes, something in the chest. The shoulders may drop a fraction. The jaw may release a tension it was holding without your awareness. The breath may deepen slightly, spontaneously, without being asked. You did nothing except think, and your body responded as though something real had entered the room. Because something real did enter the room. Thought is not abstract. It is physiological. It produces measurable changes in the chemistry of the body, in the tension of the muscles, in the quality of attention you bring to whatever comes next. Now consider the reverse. Bring to mind a worry you have been carrying, not to dwell in it, just to notice, briefly, what happens to the body when anxious thinking arrives. The chest tightens, the breath shallows, something in the gut contracts. The thinking mind begins to move faster, generating scenarios, tracking threats, rehearsing responses to problems that may never arrive. The same mechanism, different content, completely different body, completely different quality of life in that moment. This is what the Buddha meant when he said that thought is action. Not as a philosophical position, as a plain description of what you can verify in your own experience, right now, without needing any external authority to confirm it. And if thought is already action, already producing real effects in the body and the world before a single word has been spoken or a single step taken, then the quality of our thinking matters in a way that most of us have never fully reckoned with. Every thought you produce is a continuation of yourself. A thought of compassion releases something into the world, into your body, into the atmosphere of whatever space you occupy, into the subtle quality of how you meet the next person. A thought of resentment does the same. Neither disappears without a trace. Both become part of the stream of cause and consequence that shapes everything that follows. Now let's move from thought to speech. Because speech is where the interior world becomes irreversibly public. Think about a conversation you have had at some point in your life that changed something. Not necessarily a dramatic conversation. Sometimes, the most consequential words are spoken quietly, almost in passing. A teacher who said something to you at 12 years old that you still carry. A friend who, in a single sentence, named something you had been feeling for years without being able to say it. A parent whose offhand remark landed in you like a seed and grew into a shape that took decades to identify. Words do that. They enter people and continue working long after the conversation has ended. Long after, both speakers have forgotten the specific exchange. The sound is gone, but the effect remains, shaping decisions, coloring self-perception, contributing in ways that cannot be traced to the particular moment a door quietly opened or quietly closed. The Buddha included right speech as one of the 8 essential elements of the path toward liberation. Not because speaking kindly is a social nicety, but because speech is one of the most powerful forms of action available to a human being. A single conversation can reconcile 2 people who have been carrying mutual hurt for years. A single conversation can destroy a trust it took a decade to build. A single conversation, the right words, offered at the right moment with genuine care, can give a person permission to keep going when they were considering stopping. Consider what happens when a leader, any leader, in any context, speaks to a divided group with genuine humility, acknowledging the validity of perspectives different from their own. Something in the room shifts, not because the words are eloquent, but because humility in speech is rare enough that people feel it when it arrives. It disarms something. It creates a small opening where there was a wall. This is karma in action. Words as energy. Speech as a force that moves through rooms and through years, loosening what was tight, occasionally healing what seemed permanent. And the reverse is equally true, and worth sitting with honestly, because most of us have been on both sides of it. Words spoken in anger that we wish we could retrieve, not because they were entirely false, sometimes the content was accurate, but because the energy they were delivered with left damage that outlasted whatever point we were making. The argument that was won, but the relationship that was quietly injured. The frustration vented in a moment of exhaustion that the other person carried far longer than we realized. Speech is not neutral. It is never just information passing between 2 people. It is always also energy, and energy has effects that neither speaker nor listener can fully predict or control. Now let's widen the frame even further. Because karma operates not only between individuals, but between people collectively, in families, in communities, in the large impersonal systems that shape entire societies. The economic crises that have periodically shaken the modern world are not born from bad luck, not from inevitable cycles. They are born from the collective thinking of millions of people, the accumulated weight of craving, of fear, of the conviction that more is always necessary and that tomorrow must be secured at whatever cost today requires. Greed is a thought before it is a transaction. Fear is a thought before it is a policy. The instability that ripples through markets, through institutions, through the daily lives of people who never participated in the decisions that produced it, all of it originates in the mind, in thought, in the collective karma of how a very large number of people have been trained to think about safety, about enough, about what a life well lived requires. This is not a counsel of despair. It is the opposite. Because if collective difficulty arises from collective thinking, then collective thinking can also be the source of collective healing. Consider what happens in a room where people have been practicing together. Not necessarily meditating in silence, simply practicing presence, practicing genuine listening, practicing the small daily disciplines of speaking carefully and thinking with more awareness. The atmosphere in that room is different from a room where no such practice has been happening. You can feel it when you walk in. Something is less defended. Something is more available. In the long retreats at Plum Village, sometimes lasting 100 days or more, something builds in the space where many people practice together over time. The joy that arises is not the sum of individual joys. It is something created between people in the space of shared intention, shared attention, shared willingness to be present. Each person contributes their practice and receives back something larger than what they brought. The whole becomes genuinely greater than the parts. This is collective karma, not an abstract concept, something you have almost certainly experienced without having a name for it. The family dinner where everyone arrived tired but something shifted, and people stayed longer than planned, laughing, saying things that mattered. The meeting that should have been tense but wasn't, because someone in the room was calm enough to hold the space steady. The friendship group that, over years, has made each person in it slightly more themselves than they would have been alone. These are not accidents. They are the fruit of accumulated action, of thinking, speaking, and moving through shared time in ways that either build something or quietly erode it. So what does all of this mean for you, right now, in this moment? It means that you are not waiting for your life to begin. You are not in a holding pattern until circumstances improve, until you feel ready, until you finally become the person you intend to be. You are already acting. Right now, the quality of attention you bring to this moment is action. The thought that arises in you as you listen is action. The decision to stay present rather than drift is action. And all of it is shaping your continuation. Not in some distant future, where karma finally delivers its verdict. Right now, in the texture of this moment, in what you carry into the next conversation, in the small and private quality of who you are when nobody is watching and nothing is required of you. The Buddha did not teach karma to produce guilt. He taught it to produce agency, because if what you are is the result of what you have thought and said and done, then what you will become is not fixed. It is being decided continuously in increments too small to notice individually, but too consistent to ignore over time. A single kind thought does not transform a life, but 1,000 kind thoughts arising in the ordinary moments of an ordinary day accumulate into something, into a way of meeting the world, into a quality of presence that other people feel when you enter a room, that your own body feels from the inside, that becomes, gradually, reliably, without drama, the shape of who you are. You are not your past. You are what you are doing right now. And right now, in ways that are entirely available to you, you are already choosing what comes next. The cloud shapes itself by what it releases. The river shapes itself by how it moves through the landscape. And you, in every thought, every word, every quiet act of attention or care, are shaping the continuation that carries your name forward into the world. It does not require greatness. It does not require a dramatic turning point or a perfect understanding of Buddhist philosophy. It requires only this: the willingness to notice what you are doing in the small moments and to choose, as often as you can, the action that opens rather than closes, that builds rather than diminishes, that leaves the next moment a little cleaner than the one before it. That is enough. That has always been enough. And it is available to you completely in the very next thought you think, in the very next word you speak, in the very next breath you take after this one. At some point, in the quiet of a sleepless night, or in the strange stillness that follows a loss, almost every human being arrives at the same question, not as a philosophical exercise, as something felt in the body before it is formed into words. What happens to me when I die? Not to the body. We understand enough about the body to know what happens there, but to this, to the particular, irreplaceable quality of being this person, in this life, with these memories, and these loves, and this specific way of noticing the world. Does it continue? Does it vanish? Does it transform into something unrecognizable, or persist in some form that still carries the thread of what it was? Humanity has been answering this question for as long as there have been humans to ask it. And across cultures, across centuries, across every tradition of thought that has seriously engaged with it, the answers have tended to cluster around two poles. The first answer says, you continue, completely, the essential you, the part that thinks and feels and loves and suffers, persists after the body fails. It moves on to another place, another realm, another body, another existence. It remains recognizably itself across whatever transitions it undergoes. Death is not an ending but a doorway, and what passes through that doorway is fundamentally the same as what approached it. The second answer says, you stop, completely. The body fails, the processes that produce consciousness cease, and what you call yourself dissolves back into the impersonal matter from which it briefly arose. There is no continuation, no transition, no thread that carries forward. The light goes out, the particular pattern that was you disperses, and what remains is only the world going on without you in it. Most people, when they examine their own fears and hopes about death, find themselves somewhere in the gravitational pull of one of these two answers. And most people, if they are honest, find that neither answer fully satisfies. The first feels too convenient, too neat. The persistence of a fixed, unchanged self across death requires exactly the kind of permanent, independent entity that careful observation of the mind consistently fails to find. We have seen in these teachings that the self is not a fixed thing, even within a single lifetime. It is a process, a pattern, a river, not a stone that can be picked up whole and carried from one place to another. The second feels like a door closing on everything that has ever mattered. It satisfies a certain kind of intellectual austerity, a refusal to wish the universe into a more comfortable shape. But it produces, in most people who hold it, not peace, but a low-grade, persistent grief. A sense that everything is provisional, everything is temporary, and that love itself is simply a beautiful accident in a universe that has no interest in its continuation. The Buddha looked at both of these answers and said, with characteristic precision, both are wrong. Not partially wrong, not wrong in minor details, while correct in their general direction, wrong at the root, because both are built on the same mistaken assumption that there is a fixed, independent self that either continues or stops. And we have already seen that this assumption does not survive careful examination. If there is no fixed self to begin with, then the question, does the self continue after death, is like asking whether the flame continues after the candle burns down. The question assumes a fixed flame, but the flame was never fixed. It was always a process, a continuous chain of arising and passing moments of combustion. When the candle ends, that particular chain of combustion ends. But the heat it generated has moved into the room. The light it cast has touched every surface. The warmth it offered has been received by the people sitting near it. Did the flame continue, or did it stop? The question no longer quite fits. The Buddha called these two wrong views, eternalism and annihilationism. And he was insistent, across many different teachings, in many different contexts, that the path toward genuine understanding runs precisely between them, not as a compromise that takes a little from each, but as a third way that transcends both by seeing through the assumption they share. To understand what this third way actually looks like, let's spend a moment with a French chemist who lived in the 18th century and who arrived, through entirely different means, at something the Buddha had been pointing to for 2,000 years. Antoine Lavoisier was not a Buddhist. He was a meticulous scientist, working in a Paris laboratory, conducting experiments with substances that other scientists of his era were only guessing at. And through years of careful measurement and observation, he arrived at a principle that would become one of the foundations of modern chemistry. Nothing is created. Nothing is destroyed. Matter changes form, but the total quantity of matter in a closed system remains constant. What you begin with is what you end with, rearranged, transformed, distributed differently, but present in full. He was describing chemical reactions, But the principle extends beyond chemistry into something that touches every question about endings and beginnings. A log burns in a fireplace. It appears to disappear, the solid, weighty piece of wood reduced to a small pile of ash. But the wood has not vanished. It has become heat, which has moved into the room and into the bodies of the people sitting near it. It has become carbon dioxide, now part of the air. It has become ash, which will eventually return to the soil. It has become light, which for a few hours pushed back the dark. The log is gone, the wood is gone, but not one particle of what made up that log has disappeared from the universe. Every atom is still present, doing different work in a different form, as real and as present as it was before the fire was lit. Nothing is created. Nothing is destroyed. Only forms change. Only expressions shift. Only the particular arrangement of what is always already present takes on new shape and new function. The Buddha would have recognized this immediately, because this is precisely what he meant by continuation. Not the persistence of a fixed self, but the transformation of what was always a process to begin with. When a person we love dies, what we are experiencing is not annihilation. It is transformation, the particular arrangement of matter and consciousness that we called by their name, that we recognized across a room, that we knew by the specific quality of their laugh and the way they moved through a kitchen. That arrangement has changed. The form is no longer available in the way it was, and that loss is real, and the grief it produces is real, and nothing in these teachings asks us to pretend otherwise. But the heat that log produced, the warmth of every moment of genuine love, every conversation that changed something, every ordinary afternoon that accumulated quietly into the texture of a life shared, that is still in the room. That does not vanish. It has moved into the people who received it. It continues in the particular way those people now move through the world, the patience they have that they did not have before, the capacity for tenderness that was shaped by being loved, the specific things they notice and value because someone showed them how to look. Thich Nhat Hanh understood this not as consolation but as fact. When a student once asked him directly what would happen to him after he died, he answered, without hesitation and without performance. He said, "I will not die. I will continue in you, in my students, in the trees, at Plum Village, in everyone these teachings have touched. If you want to find me after I am gone, look there. You will find me." This is not a comforting story constructed to soften the facts. It is a precise description of how continuation works when you remove the assumption of a fixed self. Every genuine teaching he offered that landed in a person and shifted something, that teaching continues, carried forward in the changed person, expressed in their changed actions, passed on in ways that neither he nor they could track or predict. The log has burned. The heat is in the room. The room is warmer than it was. Now, Let's stay with the cloud for a moment longer, because it holds something that the log cannot. A log, once burned, does not return to being a log. Its transformation in that direction is complete. But a cloud, releasing itself as rain, flowing as river, evaporating from the ocean's surface, rising again into the atmosphere, moves through its transformations in a cycle that has no final ending. The water that fell as rain last Tuesday may be cloud again by next week. The river that carried it to the sea has already begun releasing it back to the sky. There is no death in this story. Not anywhere. Only movement. Only the continuous, faithful, patient circulation of what is real through form after form, expression after expression, with a persistence that no individual form could achieve alone, but that the process as a whole maintains effortlessly. The cloud does not die into rain. The rain does not die into river. The river does not die into ocean. Each transition is a continuation in a new key, the same essential nature, the same water, finding a new way to be present in the world. And you are water, in this sense, deeply and precisely, you are water. What you are is a process, not a product, a verb, not a noun, something that moves and changes and takes on form and releases form and continues, not because any single form persists, but because the movement itself persists. Shakespeare gave Hamlet a question that has stayed in the human imagination for 4 centuries. To be or not to be, existence or non-existence, the persistence of the self or its obliteration. It is framed as the only question worth asking when life becomes unbearable, as though these are the only 2 options available to a conscious being confronting its own situation. The Buddha would have listened to this question with compassion and then gently suggested that it contains its own trap. To be assumes a fixed self that either exists or does not. Not to be assumes the same fixed self, simply arrived at a different answer. Both options accept the premise, the solid, bounded, independent entity that can be possessed or lost. And that premise, held up to careful examination, does not hold. The third option, the one the Buddha spent his life pointing toward, is not a compromise between being and non-being. It is a way of understanding existence that transcends both. Not to be, not to be, to interbe, to exist not as a separate fixed thing that either persists or perishes, but as a process that is always already woven into the fabric of everything else that exists. To be the river, not the water. To be the burning, not the flame. To be the movement, not the form that movement temporarily takes. And here is what changes when you understand this, not intellectually, but in the body, in the breath, in the quiet hours when the fear arrives uninvited. The fear of death is, at its core, the fear of losing the self, the fear that this particular, precious, irreplaceable configuration of memory and feeling and awareness will one day simply not be there. That the light behind the eyes will go out, and with it, everything that mattered about this specific, unrepeatable life. But if the self was never a fixed, independent thing to begin with, if it was always a process, always a movement, always something that existed in relationship rather than in isolation, then what exactly is being lost? The form will change. The particular arrangement will disperse. The name on the door will eventually be taken down. All of that is true, and none of it is softened by this teaching. But the heat is still in the room. The water is still in the river. The warmth of every genuine moment of love and attention and care, that is not stored in the form. It has already been released into the world, already absorbed, already continuing in the changed lives of everyone it touched. You have already been reigning for years. Long before the cloud disperses, the water has been finding its way into the world, into the people you have loved, into the moments you showed up fully, into the quiet acts of patience and generosity that left no record but left their mark. The question is not whether you will continue. The question the Buddha was really asking is whether you can see your continuation clearly enough to stop spending your life in fear of losing it. Because the life that is spent defending against a death that is, in the deepest sense, not what we fear it is, that life is narrower than it needs to be, smaller, more defended, less open to the particular unrepeatable beauty of being this form, in this moment, before the form changes into whatever comes next. Neither here forever, nor gone without trace. Something more honest than both, and more enduring than either. The log burns. The room is warm. The cloud releases. The river runs. And somewhere in the movement between forms, in the faithful continuity of process that no single ending can interrupt, there you are. A farmer in ancient India once asked the Buddha a question that had nothing to do with philosophy. He asked about seeds, about soil, about the gap between planting and harvest, whether the work done in early spring could be trusted to produce something real by the time the rains came. The Buddha listened carefully and then gave him an answer about seeds and soil that was also, quietly, an answer about everything else. He said, "The seed already contains the tree, not as a promise, not as a possibility that may or may not be realized depending on circumstances. The tree is already present in the seed, folded into it completely, waiting not to be created, but to be revealed. What the farmer does is not manufacture a tree. What the farmer does is provide the conditions in which what is already there can finally show itself." The Buddha was talking about more than agriculture. Every human being carries within them what Buddhist traditions point to as a fundamental capacity for clarity, the capacity for genuine compassion, the capacity to see things as they actually are, rather than as fear and habit have trained us to see them. These are not qualities to be imported from somewhere else, earned through sufficient suffering, or granted by an external authority. They are already present, already in the seed. What practice does is what the farmer does. It provides conditions. It removes what is blocking the light. It tends the soil until what was always already there can finally emerge into the open. This is the foundation of what the Buddha called right view. And it is worth pausing on that word, right, because in English, it can sound like a judgment, correct versus incorrect, approved versus disapproved. But the original meaning is closer to something like accurate. Seeing that corresponds to what is actually there rather than to the overlays of fear, habit, and craving that most of us mistake for reality. Right view is simply seeing more clearly, and the Buddha placed it first among all the elements of practice because he understood something that takes most of us years to fully appreciate. How you see determines what is possible, not what exists. What is possible within what exists. The same set of circumstances, met with two different qualities of seeing, produces two genuinely different experiences, not because anything external has changed, but because perception is not passive. It shapes, it selects, it emphasizes certain things and renders others invisible, and what it emphasizes becomes, for all practical purposes, what is real. A mind moving through the day inside right view notices what is actually present. The warmth in a stranger's face, the small unmarked moments where something good is quietly happening, the fact that this breath arrived, that the body is functioning, that somewhere nearby something is growing. Not as forced optimism, as accuracy, as a refusal to edit out half of what is there. A mind moving through the day inside habitual fear notices threat, not because the world is more dangerous that day, but because the lens is set to find what it has been trained to find. And it finds it, reliably, everywhere. The confirmation of the fear becomes the evidence for the fear, which deepens the fear, which sharpens the lens further. Both minds are moving through the same world, only the seeing is different, and the seeing changes everything that follows. Right view is not something you can simply decide to have. You cannot read about clarity and immediately see clearly. The teaching must be carried into the body through practice, through the patient, unglamorous, daily work of learning to pay attention in a different way. The Buddha described this process with an image from the kitchen. He said, "If you want to cook potatoes, you must keep the fire burning continuously for at least 20 minutes. Light the fire and immediately turn it off, and you have done nothing. Light it and let it burn for 5 minutes, then let it go out. Still nothing. The potatoes require sustained heat. maintained steadily over time before they are genuinely transformed. Insight works the same way. A flash of understanding, the sudden, vivid recognition that you are a flame rather than a stone, that the self is a river rather than a fixed thing, that the present moment contains everything you have been looking for. That flash is real. It is genuinely valuable. But a flash does not cook the potatoes. The understanding must be maintained, returned to, kept alive through the ordinary moments of an ordinary day, not just in the elevated atmosphere of a retreat or a beautiful piece of teaching encountered at the right moment. This is what meditation is actually for. Not to produce dramatic experiences of insight, not to transport the practitioner to a state unavailable in regular life, but to keep the fire burning, to maintain the steady, continuous warmth of awareness that gradually transforms the raw material of ordinary experience into something genuinely nourishing. The potatoes cook slowly. You cannot rush them. You cannot check every 30 seconds and expect anything other than a cold kitchen. What you can do is tend the fire, trust the process, and be present when the transformation quietly completes itself. And while the fire burns, something becomes available that the Buddhist traditions across cultures have pointed to with different words, but consistent recognition. Freedom. Not freedom from difficulty, not freedom from loss or uncertainty, or the plain fact that life contains pain that cannot always be explained or resolved. But freedom within all of that, the freedom that comes from no longer being entirely at the mercy of whatever arises. Without mindfulness, we are largely automatic. A stimulus arrives, a harsh word, a sudden fear, a memory surfacing unbidden, and the response follows so quickly that it feels inevitable. Reaction happens before choice has a chance to enter. The gap between what arrives and what we do about it is too small to stand in. Mindfulness widens that gap. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually, through practice, the space between stimulus and response becomes a place you can actually inhabit, a place where you can notice what is happening before deciding what to do about it, where the old automatic response is no longer the only response available, where something chosen, something more aligned with who you actually want to be, becomes possible. This is what the Buddha meant by liberation. Not a permanent state of bliss, unreachable by ordinary people. Not a destination requiring decades of practice before the door opens, but the gradually expanding capacity to meet what arrives with awareness rather than automaticity, to choose more often the response that opens rather than closes, to find in the middle of ordinary life the small but genuine freedoms that awareness makes available. Now, where does this freedom live? Where is the pure land, the kingdom, the place of genuine rest that every tradition has pointed toward? The Buddhist teachings are unambiguous about this. The Pure Land is not elsewhere. It is not a destination. It is not a reward waiting at the end of sufficient practice. It is here, in this breath, in this moment of genuine attention, in the simple and radical act of being fully present to what is actually happening right now. The Gospel of Luke records Jesus saying something that stopped his listeners completely. He said, "The kingdom of God is within you, not above you, not ahead of you, not accessible only after death or transformation, or the resolution of everything difficult. Within you, present tense, available now." The Buddha was pointing to the same location. The treasure you have been searching for is not somewhere you have not yet been. It is somewhere you have never fully stopped. Most of us move through our days in a state of mild but constant forward lean. Not quite here, not quite now, always slightly ahead of the present moment, always preparing for what comes next, always carrying the weight of what has not yet been resolved. The present moment is something we pass through on the way to the moment that will finally be worth arriving at. But the present moment is the only place where any of this is actually happening. The only place where the breath is. The only place where warmth is felt, where food is tasted, where a face is recognized across a room, and something in the chest responds before the mind has named it. Everything real is happening here. Everything else is memory or anticipation, both of which are also happening here, in the present moment, in the only place experience ever actually occurs. And then there is the mud. The lotus is one of Buddhism's oldest and most precise images, not because it is beautiful, though it is, but because of where it grows. The lotus does not grow in clear water. It grows in mud. It requires the mud. Without the dark, decomposing, nutrient-rich mud at the bottom of the pond, the lotus has nothing to push against, nothing to draw from, nothing to root itself in as it moves toward the surface. The mud is not the obstacle to the lotus. The mud is the condition of the lotus. This is what the Buddha was pointing to when he taught that suffering, met with awareness, becomes the soil of liberation. Not that suffering is good, not that pain should be welcomed or difficulty sought, but that the suffering you are already carrying, the losses, the fears, the accumulated weight of a life that has not always gone the way you needed it to go, that suffering is not disqualifying. It is not evidence that you are too broken for this practice, too far from the starting point, too deep in the mud to reach the surface. It is the mud, and the mud is exactly what the lotus needs. Right view sees this. It sees the mud and does not look away. It does not pretend the mud is something other than it is, but it also sees the lotus pushing upward through the dark water, patient, unhurried, drawing strength from the very substance that looks, from the outside, like the thing most opposed to its flourishing. When you can see your own difficulty this way, not as proof that something is wrong with you, but as the specific soil in which your particular understanding is growing, something in the relationship to that difficulty quietly shifts. results. Not the difficulty itself, the relationship to it, which is, as we have seen throughout these teachings, where experience is actually made. The seed contains the tree, the mud holds the lotus. The present moment contains everything you have been moving toward. And the fire, tended patiently, kept burning through the ordinary Tuesday mornings, and the sleepless nights, and the long stretches where nothing seems to be changing, is already cooking something. You do not need to be anywhere other than where you are. You do not need to resolve everything before you begin. You do not need to be certain, or ready, or finally free of the thing that has been holding you back. The kingdom is not coming. It is not being built toward. It is not waiting on the other side of your next improvement. It is here, in this breath, in this moment of listening, in the simple, radical, completely available act of being present to what is actually happening right now, in you, around you, between you and the vast, patient, continuously renewing world that holds you. The farmer tends the soil. The fire stays lit. The lotus does what lotuses have always done. And underneath all of it, underneath the mud and the waiting and the slow work of transformation, the seed that was always already there, quietly, faithfully, opens. You have been here before, not in this exact moment, but in the quality of this moment, in the stillness that comes when the mind finally stops moving long enough to notice what was always here. You have touched this before, as a child watching rain on a window, as someone standing alone under a wide sky, as anyone who has ever been so tired that all the defending simply stopped and something underneath it quietly breathed. That is what you are, underneath all of it. Whatever you are carrying tonight, whatever remains unresolved, unanswered, not yet healed, you do not have to solve it right now. The cloud does not calculate where it will fall. It does not plan its continuation or worry about the form it will take next. It simply floats and releases and trusts the process that has never once failed the water. You can do the same tonight, in this breath. The teachings that have moved through this time together are not something to remember correctly. They are something to carry lightly, the way water carries light, not holding it, simply allowing it to move through. You came here as one thing. You leave as the same thing, and also in some quiet way that does not announce itself, something slightly more open than before. That is enough. That is everything. Until next time, float gently.